first of all, his ability to change direction was that impressive, and nobody else could keep up with it. But also, just who even thinks to do that? Who even has the wherewithal in their brain to make a move like that?
Hey, welcome to Beat Everyone. I'm Ben Flanagan with AL.com. As usual, I'm joined by Beat Everyone producer Matt Scalisi. And Matt, we're a couple of days removed from the Oscars, right? And like, people may not know this about us. Like, we're big movie guys, and not in the sense that like everybody's a movie person, right? Because I mean, it's an industry that makes billions and billions of dollars, right? So they need everybody to be movie people, but we probably pay too much attention, too closely of attention, especially with Oscars. Don't you think?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you and I have been arguing about it via text for over 10 years at this point, I think.
Well, we're gonna build the perfect running back here soon, and we're gonna blind rank something. I have no idea what you're about to throw my way, but first, I want to just as movie guys, right? Like we think we know something about this stuff, but I'm sure a lot of people watch the Oscars and maybe hadn't seen some of those movies that were nominated and that won. So Matt, my question to you here before we get going is, from any of the Oscar nominated or winning movies from Sunday night, now that they're going to be on streaming and available and people might be a little interested, pick one movie that you would recommend people watch.
Oh, this is an easy one for me, actually. Like for the Beat Everyone audience, if you're a sports person, if you're an Alabama football person, I think the movie that was nominated this year you would like the most is Dune Part 2, which of course requires you to have seen Dune Part 1. But those two movies put together, first of all, just incredible action, special effects stuff, like big giant movie that everybody who loves blockbuster movies would love. But the second part specifically, it's got a lot to do. I mean, we've talked on this show about the power of being a good speaker, right? And like having the charisma to get a group of people to buy into what you're doing. This movie is kind of the dark side of that, but it is all about a guy who is so good at that he creates this insane situation, this huge war, because he has so much charisma and is such a good, basically locker room speaker. And it's got one of the great speech scenes in any movie you will ever see.
Wait, so Matt, what does that have to do with Alabama football right now?
It means for people who've seen it, that Alabama could really use a Lisan Al-Gaib on their.
I think people were sending that Javier Bardem gif during the Georgia game, right?
Yeah, for sure.
They were probably
the memes have made it through to the mainstream, I think.
Yeah, but then, the very next week, they were resending that on their phone. If their Apple hadn't updated, then they couldn't do that, unfortunately. But, I didn't know if, like, for Alabama fans, you might pick, like, I don't know, The Brutalist or A Real Pain from the 2024 season, But, I'm trying to find a silver lining there. But, look, a lot of great movies. I just mentioned a couple of great ones. I think that, like, one of the most readily available movies that people can watch, one of the most accessible, entertaining, is A Real Pain with Kieran Culkin.
I liked it a lot.
He just won the Oscar.
Yeah.
He just walked away with the. It's on Hulu right now. You can go watch it now. It's like 90 minutes long. It's really funny. It's really touching and poignant. And Culkin, you'll see why that guy just ran away with the Oscar.
And you know what?
That's my recommendation.
It's not weird. And I'm not to like talk down to our listeners or whatever. Some people like weird movies, but sometimes I know you just want to chill and watch a movie, and you don't want to have to think about what it means or have it all explained to you by somebody else. A Real Pain is very straightforward, like made for everybody, I think.
Yeah, that's right. Or like if you're thinking about, Diego Pavia, as we talked about on a recent episode, Wicked, you could watch that.
Yeah, sure.
You could, yeah, there's a lot of good stuff. I think Dune 2 was awesome. One of my favorite movies of the year. Like I said, I really liked A Real Pain, The Brutalist. If you've got 4 hours on your hands, then you should pop it in as soon as it's available. But, that's the Oscars, Matt. We'll cut the Oscar talk there. I just wanted to get your take on that as people who watched that thing for 3.5 hours. And as Conan O'Brien joked, we had Stockholm syndrome halfway through. If we were still watching,
Conan was great, by the way. I loved Conan.
he crushed it.
Yeah.
He crushed it. He was awesome. Great stuff. All right, Matt, we built the perfect quarterback last week, and we crushed it like Conan on the Oscars, right? We
I
built the
think we
perfect
did.
quarterback.
I will say a lot of feedback from the listeners on our social media, which I appreciate. I would say the number one thing that I see out there that people are saying that we left out was, and we did mention him, but he did not get any of our sort of first string, I guess, choices for any of those parts of the perfect quarterback, was AJ McCarron. AJ got,
He was in my intangibles.
yeah,
He was
okay.
my intangibles
But
pick.
he got a lot of love in the comments.
He just wasn't in the graphic that we shared,
Right,
right?
right.
Which was like, again, a composite of our picks. And so for intangibles in the graphic, I think they had a Jalen Hurts, right? And then like for
Right.
arm, we had picked Coker, and we were getting a lot of grief about picking Coker. He said, Tua and Mac have better arm than Coker.
Well, you're not going to make
Blake Sims has a better arm than
we're
Coker.
not going to pick the same guy for every category, but yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And people, saying Joe Namath, and again, it was a Saban era conversation. Now, I have to think that, Matt, you can introduce this, but we're about to build another perfect blank, and I have to assume that we're going to stay in the Saban era. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so, but it's going to be easy to do that because we're building the perfect running back, Ben.
Ooh.
And arguably, this is the position where Alabama has had the strongest impact on the college game during the Saban era. I mean, they've had some great quarterbacks, had a lot of great wide receivers. Maybe we'll do that in a future show. But in offensively, I don't know that they've been as successful at any position as they were at running back. And it was, I think, kind of a foregone conclusion by the time that Saban got to Alabama that running backs were not as important as they used to be, that maybe we weren't going to really see running backs win Heisman trophies anymore. And lo and behold, two of them win a Heisman under Saban. And even outside of those two guys, a string of the most spectacular and dominant running backs that have played college football in the last 20 years have been in crimson jerseys.
Yeah, I mean, it's RBU, right? Like when people make that argument, they throw out Georgia, they throw out some of these other schools, and Alabama seems to be the runaway winner in that conversation for the reasons that you mentioned, and the multiple Heisman winners, but also look at the next level in the NFL. Who's leading the league in rushing? Look at how many Alabama guys are on that list. We're not going to name names right now, so we don't give away the game here. But I mean, it's just they're either leading the league at the top, or they're just filling out the top 5 through the top 10, and it's just one Alabama guy after another. So that was obviously an emphasis that Saban put on the offense, right, in terms of a balanced approach that he would have coaching Alabama. He wanted to run the ball. We've heard it for years and years, the rallying cry, run the damn ball, right? And that was something that, I think a lot of Alabama fans loved about Saban, because Alabama had this reputation as being hard-nosed, a program traditionally that ran the ball and hit you in the mouth, and these guys are the reason for it. And it was just, we talk about the glory years, the golden era of the Saban era, and a big reason why was this position.
Yeah, absolutely. And have a lot of diversity at the position too, not just guys that are sort of carbon copies of each other. So we'll have some interesting contrasts, I think, in these picks, Ben. And I want to start us off with an attribute that I think is definitely not always associated with every guy we're going to say today, but let's go with speed. The running back with the best, just pure foot speed out on the field.
This is an easy pick for me, and there were a lot of fast guys, but right now the guy's tearing it up in the NFL just in his second year. One of the best players in the league, Jahmyr Gibbs. It has to be Jahmyr Gibbs.
That's my pick too for this spot, Ben. Yeah,
I mean, it's got to be. I mean, this guy is just electric whenever he touches the ball, and part of it is because, I mean, he can just take off and go. He's shifty. He's actually more like durable than you would think for somebody his size too. But I mean, when the guy just has the open field right in front of him, you're not going to catch him. And he's a frustrating player, Matt, because we look back on that era and think of who his offensive coordinator was, and we mentioned it and joked about it here before. Whenever he has a big game, Bill O'Brien's trending on Twitter. It's one of my favorite traditions in the NFL now. But in the hands of maybe somebody else. And look, he had a good season, but like you got to think like this guy, get the guy touches. This guy's a Heisman contender, maybe a Heisman winner, considering he can bust a play whenever he touches the ball. So
Yeah,
speed, I got to go Gibbs.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, just an incredible athlete that Alabama was able to get from the transfer portal, and one of their best transfer skill players maybe ever that they've gotten. I'll throw because you this was gonna be my pick too. I'm gonna throw another name in here as an honorable mention for this one, and I'm gonna say Damian Harris for this, who I have immediate recollections of as having a lot of those sort of big breakaway runs. Particularly, I think you would see them early in the game. He seemed to come out of the gate really on fire, and there were in the way that you'd get sort of a home run shot with a wide receiver early in a game to try to put an opponent on their heels. It seemed like they loved to set up Damian Harris to get sprung loose for one of those long runs. I'm remembering a Texas A&M game, I think, where he scored on the first play, and he had a lot of those. He had a lot of long explosive runs that I think happened because if he got to the second level, if he got past the line, he was going to be extremely difficult to catch.
100%. He was great. And you're right. Like Damian Harris, I don't have the stats in front of me right now, but I think he had one of the best yards per carry stats as a running back in the Saban era. And a big reason why is because you're right. Like he would just go off on these long runs. And I think early in his career, and I think he's even joked about it, he would get run down, by
Right.
defensive backs who would catch him. But he obviously worked on his speed and he developed into a finishing breakaway player with those long. That's a great pick. There are a couple other good picks that I was kind of saving for other categories that are guys that are just really super fast. But yeah, I feel good about Gibbs. I know you do too. One game I think of is obviously that Arkansas game in 2022 when Bryce Young gets hurt, and I think Gibbs had two separate plays of 70 plus yards that both were touchdown runs. And the guy's just an unbelievable player. But Damian Harris was great. I mean, at this point, Damian Harris has to be considered an underrated running back
Yeah, I
from the
think
Saban
so.
era.
I think so. And which is weird to say because he had such a long tenure as a contributor. He like you said, he was playing pretty early on, and he stayed for a long time. So,
That's right.
all right, Ben. Our next attribute here is power. I think there's an obvious choice, but I'm also prepared to drop another couple of names here too.
There is an obvious choice, but then you get into like, okay, well, who am I leaving out in this conversation? Because I would take either or, right?
Hmm.
But I think it would be silly if we didn't pick Derrick Henry
Right.
here. I mean, it has to be him. But he, other than his power, he does a lot of things really well,
Hmm.
right? He was super fast too. He had some 50-yard breakaway
Feels
runs where
like
he
he gets
outran the entire defense.
feels like he gets faster the longer he's
Yeah.
running too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's also a testament to power. But I mean, you hear about this guy in the weight room. The guy's just a total freak of nature when it comes to just athletic ability, and strength is obviously one of those attributes that people pinpoint when it comes to Derrick Henry. But we'll get into another category later where he's a perfect fit. But I think like I have another option that works. But I mean, look, Alabama had dominant running backs of every size, every ability. Like, I mean, it was just this running back we're about to build is going to be the most versatile, destructive force in the history of football, and it's because of these guys.
Yeah. I mean, Henry is really like the textbook uh photo for strength at the running back position. I mean, that the Michigan State uh Cotton Bowl play where he not I mean, stiff arm is an inappropriate descriptor of it. He threw a guy onto his butt in the middle of a play and then finished for a touchdown. Just an incredible, powerful athlete that probably would be dominant at a number of positions. And famously, a lot of people said he wouldn't play running back because he was so big and strong. Just even to this day seems to be a baffling matchup for people in the NFL. Just even at that level, people saying it doesn't seem fair that this guy can play running back.
Yeah, I think honestly, like I think that at Alabama, there were probably a couple of guys that were a little harder to bring down than Derrick Henry. I think that like that's just like the fight that they had in them,
Hmm.
like even for their size relative to him. But in the open field, he's probably the last guy that you want to even attempt to tackle
Yeah,
because of the strength and
there's
speed.
just different bad things he can do to
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
And
he's the answer.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, let's save some other names for other categories, I think. Let the next category I want to hit here, Ben, is moves. So change of direction, jukes, spin moves, whatever it is, basically that part of your arsenal as a running back, making guys miss in the open field.
I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs would have been a great pick here. I
Mhm.
mean, again, I mentioned how shifty he was, and he's so subtle with it too. Like he just his body control is just unbelievable. The lateral movement. He's a north and south runner. Like he, so on a different day, I'd probably pick him. I think Josh Jacobs has to be my pick
Okay.
in this category. I mean, you talk about a guy with everything you need at the position. Like to me, Josh Jacobs is if you're talking about who's the best overall, just pure running back in this conversation, Jacobs has to be at the top of the list. And part of that is because, again, how people refer to the bag, right? Like he just kind of
Mhm.
has a little bit of everything. And when he's in the open field, when he's breaking tackles, like the guy just has great footwork, great moves, as you mentioned. Josh Jacobs just slippery, a lot more slippery than you would think, but also powerful, very strong back, will run you over too. But Jacobs can catch it out of the backfield too, and he's got to make a defender miss. He's one of those guys who can do that. So Josh Jacobs is just an unbelievable back. It's amazing to me that as good as he is in the NFL, as good as he was at Alabama, he never started for Alabama at the position. That's how competitive this position group has been throughout the years. Josh Jacobs, one of the best to ever do it, never started. Crazy.
Incredible player. I'm going with Najee Harris at this spot, Ben, and just has a highlight reel of some of my favorite moves after a catch that I've ever seen from a running back. I mean, you could watch the SEC championship game in 2020 alone and see like more fun plays by a running back that some guys have their entire career. And Harris absolutely went off in that game. He was unstoppable, but he had this ability, I think, to do spectacular things when they weren't entirely necessary, but they worked still. I mean, I don't think he's style over substance by any means. I mean, Najee Harris is one of the most effective backs Alabama's ever had, uh, but the range of things he could do with his body was so impressive. There is a play in that SEC championship game where he appears to be stopped. I mean, there's like three defenders between him and the goal line, and he spins the opposite way that his body's momentum is taking him, and then suddenly there's nobody between him and the end zone. Uh, because first of all, his ability to change direction was that impressive, and nobody else could keep up with it. But also, just who even thinks to do that? Who even has the wherewithal in their brain to make a move like that? On top of it, I can bring up the hurdling over people, which is something he did multiple times. We know coaches hate to see it, but look, when you can time it just right, it's really impressive. He did it in a playoff game. I think he did it against South Carolina at some point too, just making guys look silly. Um, but just a very, I think he had power and speed too, but a guy that I think his most deadly thing about him was his ability to change direction incredibly quickly.
Great improviser. You're right. I mean, the hurdle was his signature play at Alabama,
Right.
and he's still doing it in the NFL. And I think, like he said before, like people ask him, why do you hurdle?" And he just says, "I just got sick of people diving at my legs." And so that was just
Understandable.
that's the first thing he thought of. It's just like I'll just jump over him. Sure, I mean, like if you're that caliber of an athlete, you can get away with that. But you mentioned the South Carolina game. I think that was 2022 on the road at South Carolina. That was a fourth down play. I want to say it was like right before the end of the first half, and Tua just found Najee Harris on like a little crossing route, check down kind of route, and then he just embarrasses the South Carolina defenders. And one of the most spectacular single plays of Alabama's history, let alone the Saban era, where he goes in, he does the Megan Rapinoe
Oh, that's
celebration in the
right.
end zone.
I forgot about
So,
that.
and you're right. I think he got Notre Dame with a hurdle
Mhm.
that got memed into oblivion, which was really good. You're right. I mean, like there was a play in the Ohio State national championship game in 2020 where he caught again another check down out of the backfield where Mac Jones found him on the left side. And if you pause where he caught the ball, how many defenders were around him, it was like on the 15-yard line or something, then you would have said, there's no way this guy scores a touchdown here. There's no way the guy gains 5 yards here. And somehow he managed with spin moves and other improvisational, just
Diving
like
into the
insane
end zone,
things.
reaching the
Yeah,
ball
he
out. Yeah.
scores a touchdown. Yeah, just when he was not. So he just did things that like he had this like brain, I guess, that like other people just don't think of the things that Najee does once he has the football. When he talks, like I mean, when he talks, he says crazy weird things too.
That's
But when he plays football, he's an eccentric player
that's a great
too.
that's a
So he
great
super fun
I
to
love
watch.
tying that
Excuse
together,
me.
Ben. Yeah, he's a very unconventional person generally. He thinks differently than everybody else does, and that extends to his play on the field. That's a great point. Um,
Yeah. Okay. Good pick.
all right, so Ben, we're going to talk about receiving skills for a running back, a crucial component of the position.
Yeah, this is tough. I think Najee would be great at this too,
Mhm.
because we just mentioned all of these, catches he's making, he's scoring after his catching and running. I think a guy that I'm gonna go with here, a kind of unsung running back from the Saban era, but had his big moment culminate on the biggest stage. I'm gonna go Kenyon Drake
Love that
here.
pick.
Yeah, catching the ball out of the back, but also lining up at wide receiver
Yeah,
too. I mean,
quite a bit.
memorably against Florida in 2014. I think it's like early in the game when Kiffin puts him out wide, and then I think he's raising his hands before Alabama even snaps the ball because Kenyon Drake has just gone burning people down the field. So I mean, the guy can return kicks. He's a good running back. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He kind of had everything, and he spent a lot of his career as a second and third string guy behind the likes of Derrick Henry and some of these other super talented backs. But Kenyon Drake could have started at Alabama, would have started anywhere else in the country, but he was a playmaker and he had speed and he had ability to catch the ball and he had ability to pick up extra yards. And you talk about moves too. I mean, the guy he had a just unbelievable skill set. So I'm going to give some love to Kenyon Drake and pick him as my receiving running back.
I love that pick. I will say there's a statistical answer to this, which is Najee Harris, who has the most receptions for a running back at Alabama. He had 43 receptions in 2020, which is truly nuts. I mean, that is a receiver line, but I'm gonna spread the love around since I just gave it to him for the moves. And I'm gonna say I actually think Josh Jacobs, I think is an incredibly underrated receiver as a running back. I mean, we talked about that he's good at everything, but some of I think probably two or three of the plays I think of when I think of Jacobs are plays that he caught the ball out of the backfield. I can think of obviously the play in the Orange Bowl against Oklahoma where he ends up trucking a guy, but also a real backbreaking touchdown play in the Iron Bowl where he truly
Yeah.
looks like a wide receiver. I mean, he's catching it in stride. Uh, just was a beautifully run route and perfectly caught ball.
Downfield.
Yeah,
Yeah. Downfield play.
yeah. I mean, he was a real danger as a receiving option in those offenses that he played in.
Yeah, he could do everything. And again, like that's a testament to the recruiting, obviously, that Saban and the staff did, just in terms of identifying these guys who just could do anything and were just great football players. I mean, not to mention blocking, not to mention just being all around versatile guys who were ready for the next level. And that's why we've seen so much success. But Josh Jacobs, Jahmyr Gibbs, like I keep going back to him, but I mean, as a receiver, he would line up wide too. He would catch passes downfield too. I mean, he'd probably be just as good as a receiver if he wasn't playing
Absolutely.
running back. So, golly, you got a lot of choices, but I think we did well.
Yeah. All right, Ben. This is my final category, and this is sort of its own little debate that I think we've had a lot of times over the years. I'm calling it short yardage, but essentially the question here is: you need 1 yard. What Alabama running back from the Saban era are you handing the ball to?
So there are three guys that I'm thinking of. We've obviously talked about Derrick Henry
Mm-hmm.
already, and maybe you answer him here. I don't know, but there are three guys that I immediately think of, and they were all in the same running back room in the same backfield, essentially one season. And I'm going a little earlier in the Saban era, but I just don't think we can have who's the perfect running back, who's the best running back, that conversation about Alabama football without talking about Mark Ingram. Mark Ingram is my pick here. That guy was going to get the yard. And again, like he wasn't as big as Derrick Henry. He wasn't as fast as Jahmyr Gibbs, but the guy was just, again, one of the best football players that I've ever seen in my life. And I think that we talked about intangibles when we were talking about quarterback. Mark Ingram had that. Like he just had that competitive desire, fight, whatever you want to call it. He wanted to kill you. He wanted to run over you. You talk about like his yards after contact. That was always a stat they loved to share on the ESPN or CBS broadcast wherever Alabama was playing. I mean, the guy just had unbelievable instincts as a running back, but he just wanted to win, and he was going to do everything he could to get that extra yard. And so if it was 4th and 1, I mean, yeah, you can throw Derrick Henry and maybe a guy that you're about to mention or one of a couple of guys you're about to mention, but Mark Ingram was going to get it. I had full confidence in that guy.
Especially if you direct snap it to him, I think that's a good pick there. Yeah, I love that. And honestly, yes, there are several guys in this list that we've already mentioned. So I'm gonna I've said this as the answer to this question for many years, and I'll stick with it today, which is I think at his peak, I think Eddie Lacy was pretty unstoppable back in 2012,
Yeah.
in that especially right around SEC championship game to the national championship game, that 2 game stretch. And he wasn't the starter. I mean, he was sharing the field with TJ Yeldon. Well, he was the starter. He was not the only guy getting snaps, and he shared quite a bit of the load with TJ Yeldon. But Eddie Lacy would get sort of charged up, and there were some truly unbelievable stretches of those games against Georgia and Notre Dame, and it seemed like nobody could do anything to this guy. It seemed like you could never bring him down at first contact. Um, had a little bit of everything we've talked about today: strength, speed, moves. Was really dangerous if they could get the ball out to him in the flats. Just a spectacular player who sort of peaked at exactly the right time. And like I said, I've said for years, if you can give me Eddie Lacy from November of 2012 through January of 2013, I think that's the guy that I want for a single carry.
Wow. Yeah, for a single carry. I mean, certainly a short yardage situation, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're right. I mean, he to me was the embodiment of the term joyless murder ball for Alabama.
Right.
Like especially in that Notre Dame game, obviously, but then also when he's just like barreling down the field like a bowling ball against Georgia in that SEC championship. I mean, Eddie Lacy, he was unstoppable. Like there was nothing you could do about it. And you're right, like he peaked at the exact right time for Alabama. So I think he's one of your and my favorite players from the Saban era. So entertaining, an entertaining guy too. Great in interviews. I love that he had early success in the NFL playing for the Packers. He was fun to watch there too. So I love that pick. I mentioned that three guys being sort of in the same running back room where Eddie Lacy was third string was, I believe, in 2010 when it was Mark Ingram, Trent Richardson, and Eddie Lacy. Trent Richardson's another guy who deserves a lot of love
Yes,
here
and
at the running back
I think we could
position.
have talked about him for the moves category
Yeah.
for sure. Had some of the most fun jukes and cutbacks of any running back at Alabama just was really. I mean, if you go back and look at the highlights from that 2009 season, particularly, Richardson doesn't get talked about a lot, I think, as a part of that team, but a huge component of it, not just spelling Mark Ingram. I mean, I think he did things that Ingram couldn't do.
Yeah, I mean, think about the 2009 Iron Bowl. You go down to Auburn, and whether it was a hip flexor or just a bad day, Mark Ingram just didn't have it that day, and they needed Trent Richardson to step up, and he did in a big way, certainly. And you're right, like he was who a lot of people thought was like the more talented back between the two. He was a huge recruit, and this I think was back when you were covering recruiting, Matt. Maybe I can't remember, but I mean, he it was just like an enormous deal that
Yeah.
Alabama was able to sign him, and he rose to the challenge, was a Heisman finalist, was a national championship as a starting running back in 2011. So Trent
And
Richardson, great. He's another guy that I would have tapped to pick up a short yardage situation.
and
So
yeah, and
yeah, wait, look,
and you want to talk about strength too. But
oh
my
man,
one of my favorite anecdotes from my time covering recruiting was Trent Richardson as a high school player training himself by running up and down big piles of sand all for hours after football practice. Just one of those just freaks of nature.
yeah, that's like Rocky training up and down the snowy mountains when Drago is like he's got every
That's right.
machine that he just you got to do it the old fashioned way sometimes. But I mean, Trent Richardson was the dude was built like Thanos. Like I
Yep.
mean he was like he was unbelievable. He was a truck too. So golly, man, it's hard to pick from all these just incredible players from the Saban era.
Well, I think we've got a good composite here. I'm sure people will find a name that we didn't mention and yell at us
Yeah,
for
we
it.
screwed up. I'm sure we screwed up. Let us know how we screwed up. We hear you, whoever you throw at us here. And remember, Saban era, right? So,
Yes.
like, we didn't mention, you know, Derek Lassick. We didn't mention some
Sean
of these
Ale-
other,
Sean
yeah,
Alexander, yeah.
yeah. Ahmad Galloway, and yeah, Sean Alexander's obviously the name certainly that you would think of, but they're great players, but we're just focusing on what is clearly again, you talk about the golden era of Alabama football. This is the golden era of the running back in college
No
football, not
question.
just at Alabama.
Nobody had it better than Alabama did during the Saban era when it comes to running backs. It's as good as it ever got, I think.
All right, we crushed it. The Oscar goes to us for picking the best, making the best running back, the perfect running back in Alabama history. So let's take a break, Matt. And when we come back, we're going to blind rank something. I don't know what it is. I'm blind about
You
blind
are.
ranking here. So we'll take a quick break. Stick with us. This is Beat Everyone.
All right, Ben, we've had some fun on this show in the offseason doing blind rankings where I throw a list of things at you and you have to put them in order 1 through 5 without knowing what's coming next. And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. And we've done this with high stakes situations. We've done it with offensive coordinators. I think we've done it with backup quarterbacks at one point. Or we may have done it with starting quarterbacks actually. But Ben, I have a blind ranking task for you today that I think is a really important tenet of the Alabama football experience, and that is the concession stand food at Bryant Denny Stadium. So I'm gonna throw
Okay, bring
I'm
it.
gonna throw items at you, and I need you to blind rank them for me. All right?
Okay, I'm ready. I think about this way too much,
Yeah.
Matt.
This is a
More than
crucial look.
more than most people do.
This takes a lot of your time when you're at the
Yeah.
stadium. It takes a decent amount of your money too. So
Yes, way too much.
this is
Way too much of it.
one of
Way too much of it. I'm saying that into the microphone. Lower the prices.
one of
They're
the most
ridiculous.
important decisions every Alabama football fan makes if they attend a game. So we're gonna rank them now. First up, Ben, popcorn.
Popcorn's low. It's great. Popcorn's great. I like popcorn. I'm tempted to put it at 5. I think it's among the weakest of the concession food. Like anything that I can make in my house and make it okay, I shouldn't have to overpay for at a stadium. I think you're going to give me something bad on this list at some point, and popcorn is a very safe pick. Most people would probably put that at 2 or 3 because they're crazy and they're spending, like, you should never go somewhere other than a movie theater and overpay for popcorn. So and it's always cold too
Yeah,
in
that's
a
the
football stadium. I don't like cold popcorn. I'm tempted to go 5 here, but I'm gonna play it safe. I'm gonna be smart about this, Matt. Until you blindside me, I'm gonna put it at 4. Popcorn's 4.
Yeah, I think the issue is it's just not the best version of popcorn.
No, nowhere
It's
even
sitting
close.
there in a
They were.
bin.
I went to an Alabama basketball game recently, and in the like with 6 minutes to go in the game, they were just giving boxes of popcorn away to people. They were like, "We can't sell this stuff," and they're trying to give 100 boxes of this stuff away to people. So popcorn at a
Yeah.
sporting event, it's just weak. It's weak.
Quick aside, Ben and I used to run movies at the Ferguson Center, the student center at Alabama back in our college days, and we would operate an ancient popcorn machine in there. And we were often lauded for the quality of our popcorn that we made. So
That's right. We didn't have to meet any health codes.
No,
back
we
then,
did not
I
at
don't
all.
think either. No.
thank God. All right, Ben. Next up, the Denny dog. So not just a plain hot dog, okay? This is the signature hot dog at Bryant-Denny Stadium, where you have basically that orange condiment on it that I think is a mix of ketchup, mustard, and kraut. That's
I'm not a
that's the signature hot dog at Bryant-Denny Stadium.
personally. I like a plain dog. Call me what you will.
I know you're
guess,
a big
but
anti-condiment guy.
Yeah, I'm not a condiment guy. Like if you have to mask whatever you're eating with condiments that you can put on anything, then whatever they cooked and whatever they gave you isn't good enough.
An insane
You need
take.
to enhance it.
An insane take.
You need to enhance it with something that you can put on literally anything, something that comes out of a little plastic packet that's been sitting on a counter for God knows how long, probably expired in some cases, Matt, and that's going to make your whatever burger, hot dog, whatever better. I don't think so. If whatever you cooked doesn't come off the grill ready to eat and delicious, you blew it. But hot dog is one of the tenets of the concession stand experience. So even though I'm not a Denny dog connoisseur, so to speak, I think the hot dog belongs in the top half of any concession stand list. So I'm going to put it at 2.
I think
that's a safe pick.
I think that's a good pick. It's it's you're right. It's quintessential. I love that you don't want anything getting in the way of that pure taste of hot dog, that quality meat.
All those 25-cent hot dog nights at Birmingham Barons games in my childhood just ruined me, man.
Yeah.
Those were just that's the most 25-cent anything is probably the most delicious thing you'll ever eat.
Oh, just coming back to your seat with an armload of hot dogs that you paid
right.
almost nothing for. That's as good as it gets. All right.
Yep.
Ben, next up, and I would say this is a more controversial one. Nachos at Bryant-Denny Stadium.
Oh, 5. I'm going to go I just said 5, but I like nachos. They're good on the record. But cold nacho cheese in a November game at Bryant-Denny Stadium, bad.
Where it's solidified, yeah.
Yeah, it's not good. Cold nacho cheese, on a fair tortilla chip, the worst kind of tortilla chip, I should say. With or I guess a corn chip is what they would call it. It's not great. So I've got the qualifier of this being a football idea or thought experiment.
Right.
So I'm gonna put nachos at 5. I think under popcorn. Nachos are better than popcorn, but I'm putting them at 5.
All right. So you have the 3 spot left and the 1 spot left. Okay.
Okay. I'm ready.
Peanut M&Ms.
Ooh, peanut M&Ms. I love peanut M&Ms.
They don't have a huge candy selection at Bryant-Denny, but this is one that always I am in my mind. I see a clear picture of a box of peanut M&Ms at the concession stand.
Yeah, I love peanut M&Ms. One of my favorite candies. It's a go-to, and I have gotten them at Bryant-Denny Stadium many times. I don't know what you're going to give me. I feel like you're saving me something for the last pick here. Either I'm going to feel stupid for not putting it at number 1, or I'm going to feel stupid for not putting it at number 5. It's not the number 1 thing that I would get from a concession stand, but I'm going to put peanut M&Ms at number 1. Just because
wow.
It's an old faithful. It's something that I can rely on. I feel fine about it. If it's the only thing that I'm ever getting at a concession stand, is it better than a hot dog? Is it better than Popcorn, yes, it's better than popcorn. Combine it with popcorn, like at a movie
I like
theater,
that.
maybe.
I
But
like that pick.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So number one, peanut M&Ms. I don't feel great about it, but we'll see what you're going to
You
give
didn't
me
you
for
didn't
number
give
two.
yourself a huge gap between the final two. So I think you played it relatively safe. The last one, Ben, is the souvenir cup drink, which I think for a lot of people is a must have when they go to a game.
It's great. I love the souvenir cup. Like, really, it's like Coke never or whatever you get, it never tasted better coming out of one of those cups. And then that ice, they put too much ice in it, right? So you're
Right?
not getting enough bang for your buck because souvenir cups cost like $10 now in Coleman
Yeah.
Coliseum and at Bryant Denny Stadium. So again, too much, but you're getting a memento, right? A souvenir. It's in the name. You're going to have something that you're either going to drink out of for the rest of your life. You're going to use to like bathe your child or dog or something like in the bathroom.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
Who knows? Who knows? I'm sure a lot of people listening have all various uses for souvenir
but I'm a
cups.
big souvenir cup. I'm a big souvenir cup guy. Like I've collected them throughout my entire life. From the Batman Returns and Jurassic Park cups from
Right.
McDonald's, the souvenir cups at various Alabama sporting events. I've got a ton of them. The Saban era has been good to us in that regard, even though I think they're getting a little smaller incrementally, like every single year. But that's a conspiracy theory for another episode, Matt. But yeah, it's fine. Souvenir cup. If you'd given me that first, I probably would have put it at 3. So
Okay.
we're good there.
All right.
We're good there.
Well, that's your final ranking here, Ben. Nachos at number 5, popcorn number 4, souvenir cup at number 3, the Denny dog at number 2, peanut M&Ms with the win at the top of the list.
Peanut M&M shouldn't be number 1. It should probably be the hot dog the souvenir cup.
I will say you're never going to have a bad box of peanut M&Ms. The floor is very high.
No, I totally agree. Would you order these much differently than I did?
I don't know. I think I would put the hot dog number 1. That's a big one for me. I don't know that I've been to. I mean, look, as a lot of people may be aware, if you sit in the press box, you're often treated to some pretty good food at Bryant Denny Stadium. A way better food than they serve over at Jordan Hare, by the way. Just an absolute shame over there what they're doing to the media. But they also at halftime of those games would bring up a hot dog setup. And I think I had a hot dog at more games than not, and I've probably been at multiple hundred of games. So who knows how many years that's taken off the end of my life, Ben.
It's amazing. Like it's just like you got to control yourself. Like from they say no cheerleading is permitted in the press box. Before at halftime every game.
Yeah,
it's like you don't need to tell anybody that. You need to tell them like control yourself at halftime when hot dogs come out. Like because it's an all you can eat buffet essentially.
People
like,
lined
just show
up.
some self control.
Yeah, I will say this. My personal move with the hot dog, I'm going to put everything you can possibly put on it up there. I'm the opposite.
No hot dog.
I'm the opposite of
then
you.
there's no hot dog. Then what's the point of hot dog?
Ketchup, mustard, relish, kraut.
It's a condiment salad.
Onions.
It's like a condiment salad is all that is. Like you buried the hot dog. You've taken the taste of the Frankfurter away from what you're eating there. So I don't get it. Just got to be bread and hot dog. That's it.
Amazing. Your toddler palate here with hot dogs. All right, Ben. That's a whole other controversy. But I look, it's we're having some fun. But like that's a big part of the experience. I think for a lot of people. My kids, I've started taking them to a game or so a year. And I know going in, I mean, I just got to be financially prepared. The kids want the food at the game. It's a big part of the experience.
Yeah. You hear that, you hear the stress that, these stadiums are putting on parents when they're taking their kids to games. We're sweating how much we're going to spend, but you got to give them it's a win in Rome type of thing.
Yeah.
Like even at Alabama games now, like when people are walking around with those $17 pretzels and, they're carrying two $11 beers with them. They don't care. They're there to enjoy themselves. And, same thing. You're right. Like when I bring my daughter, it's like, I know she's going to want that shaved ice. I know that she's going to want that drink. Like, so you're right. Like you got a budget, Matt.
That's right. All right. Well, that's it for our blind ranking this week, Ben. Good job.
Yeah, that was fun, Matt. Thanks for doing that. I'll hit you back with one next time. And these are a ton of fun. Please weigh in. Tell us what we got wrong. Tell us where you would put those things. That's it for Beat Everyone. Thanks. You can find the show wherever you get your podcasts. You can watch us on YouTube. And for Matt Scalisi, our Beat Everyone producer, I'm Ben Flanagan with AL.com. We're going to see you next time.